As you've heard my colleagues say, this is a thoughtful, cost-effective program, which was eliminated one day in April, leaving communities and individuals sort of out in the cold with no understanding of where they were going to go to get the funding for their work. Maine, like many states, has been hit by some very serious storms. If you haven't had one in your state, one is coming soon, but most of you have experienced some level of disaster that your state and local government cannot afford. FEMA comes in and helps out, and as you've heard, one of the most important things is not doing everything exactly the same way you did the last time, so we just spend the same money over and over and over again to rebuild. That is an efficient way to use government funding, and it's a good way to plan and think into the future, and that was the idea of the BRIC program, to help communities to be more resilient to face the future. Now, Maine had two back-to-back storms 2 years ago in January, which devastated much of our working waterfront. About 50% of our wharves and coastal communities had some level of damage, and some of it was gone completely. These were fishing wharves that belonged to families for a long time. These were breakwaters and wharfs that belonged to communities. These were extremely expensive things to repair. Many of these communities over time have qualified for BRIC grants. And the value of them is it allows the community to think ahead and say, what's going to happen when the next storm hits? Why should we build this somewhat differently? What kind of way can we restructure our waterfront or our wharf that is vital to our community for transportation, for economic uses, for our commercial fishermen, for our recreational boaters? The only way you can get in and out in many communities is by water. And you have to rebuild them in a way that withstands what's going to happen in the future. That's what being resilient is, and that's what these grants are. Now, one of the arguments the administration made was this was too woke. We were talking about climate change, and that's a misuse of the program. Well, whether or not you want to believe that climate change exists, sea level rise is happening, and it's happening in all of our coastal communities. These storm surges that come with our winter storms now are so severe that one building in my town was flooded up to people's waist. People had never seen flooding like this that we had 2 years ago, and the building was almost washed away after being there for more than 100 years. Well, if a community like mine or other coastal communities doesn't plan ahead and try to be more resilient, and whether you call it climate change or you call it sea level rise or extreme storm surge or extreme weather, it doesn't matter. It's what we're going to face in the future, and that's what resilience is. That's what thinking into the future is. And if this government can't gird itself to think into the future and spend the taxpayers' dollars in such a way to make sure we're planning for that, then we are truly waste, fraud, and abuse right here in this committee. We are wasting our taxpayer dollars. So this has been a wonderful program. It was shocking to our communities when they got that call in April. Nobody ever expected a FEMA grant to suddenly be dropped overnight. Grants that people had already been doing the planning and having meetings and thinking ahead were suddenly disappeared. And there aren't a lot of other sources for this money. So I urge the committee to put this back. I urge this funding to be reinstated, and I urge us all to spend the taxpayer dollars a little more wisely, and I yield back.